Welcome to the Superior Stream episode 4. This will be, I guess, the pre-wedding show. I actually did a show, I think, last night just to kind of test the waters in YouTube, and my internet died, so that episode kind of went to the wayside, so to speak. So what am I going to be going over tonight? A couple topics I started to go over last night, but didn't get to finish on or felt I didn't like that much. So probably going to cut right to the chase, get right to the meat of the bones. What am I doing on YouTube now? I I do enjoy using Twitch. It's a very useful website, but after a careful scanning over of their terms of service, I realized that the format that I'm trying to do, which is a more podcast style show, where I just have a static background for certain days and talk about whatever's on my mind, isn't always video game related. And in their terms of service, they specify that you have to be talking about video games or be playing video games whenever you're streaming on Twitch. So, and while I do love video games quite a bit, I I wanted the creative freedom to stray from that kind of formula if I so desired. So that's why I'm switching over to YouTube, at least for the time being, until I find a superior streaming alternative. But from what I tested out earlier, it seems to work just fine. Like I said, last night I gave it a test run and everything worked as well as I would have hoped. Like I said, the only issue was my internet died and that kind of killed the stream. But today I have a backup running of the stream into an external hard drive. So in the worst case scenario, the screen will go black or you'll stop hearing me, and I'll just upload the remaining rest of the stream later. I can watch all the time to see how well my stream's going, so I'll tell if it's died or not. But yeah, that's just about it for the YouTube. I guess I can talk a bit about why I'm switching over though, because that's one of the topics I was kind of getting into yesterday. But yeah, why YouTube? Like I said, Twitch, the TOS issue is one thing. Uh, and another thing is, whenever I get done with the stream, I automatically upload it to YouTube. So in a way, I'm kind of cutting out the middleman. Whereas before, I would have to wait for Twitch to do its business. I guess at this point, it's going directly to YouTube, and I believe it uploads a bit faster. So if there's an issue with the video or something to that effect, I can go after it in a reasonable amount of time as opposed to waiting on Twitch to get around to doing whatever it does. Although, as I understand it, I believe YouTube now owns Twitch, so I don't know, figure that one out. I don't know, what else about YouTube? Like I said, I've used YouTube before, I'm fairly familiar with it. I've not done really that much live streaming with it before. I've seen people use it for Hangouts, which is neato, but I've never actually seen how well it's used in regards to streaming. Unlike Twitch, you have to set up a show ahead of time, but you don't actually have to start streaming when you say you're streaming. So I can put a show up for 12 o'clock next Tuesday, and I believe I could start streaming right now if I wanted to. It would be completely way ahead of schedule, but it's just kind of how wonky their streaming service is. I think they should just kind of maybe redo it. Let me get a sip of water. Redo the streaming service so that you can do more. Ad hoc is the word I want to use. I don't know, maybe not. More spontaneous streams. Yeah, where I can just hit a button and it'll go. In its current form, you have to press a couple different buttons and switches to make things work. And for someone who's technically affluent, such as myself, it's not that big of a chore. But for the person who's just trying to get into it and doesn't quite understand the nuance of, technology and such, I can see it being a bit of a hurdle if you're wanting to, attempt to stream. But like I said, from what I've used so far, it seems fairly intuitive. You know, not everything out the gate is works perfectly. And as I understand, YouTube live streaming is fairly new. I think it's been out for a year or so, and the version that I'm using is not the original version. It's had multiple iterations up to this point. So I can only imagine how terrible it was when it was first released. But I went over a few topics yesterday to kind of test the waters to see how they sounded coming out of my mouth. I'm gonna cut probably the Facebook uh, topic because I thought I had more information on it, but I didn't. Like I felt I didn't have that much to say. So I'm gonna switch gears and move directly into Raid Finder, which I was able to go on about for a little while. That's one of the few things I enjoyed talking about. Uh, get started here, but Raid Finder. What is Raid Finder? If you've not played any MMOs, you're probably not familiar with the term. If you are, you're familiar. That was a strange way of talking. That pause there. Uh, Raid Finder is, I guess, the closest equivalency I could draw would be Matchmaker for online first-person shooters. Uh, Much the same way Matchmaker works, it gathers up people of typically a similar skill and or in-game level set that would assist you uh, in a dungeon, raid, instance, whatever the game has where everyone works together in cooperation. And on its face, Raid Finder is a good thing. It makes it easier to meet people, interact with people, and complete in-game content. So in that regard, it works well. But unlike a matchmaker, say for a first-person shooter, where in a first-person shooter, you just go into a match, you don't necessarily have to talk or say anything to anyone. You run around and kill people. The match is over, and you never see them again. In an MMO, the dynamic is completely different. It's no longer the emphasis no longer being on gameplay, but rather socialization. Of course, gameplay is a part of the socialization, but for MMOs, socialization is the driving force behind the community, which is another important aspect of MMOs. And the problem I find with Raid Finder, and I'm not the only one, so like I said, I'm one of many voices on this issue. That Raid Finder in particular limits the social interaction you would normally get out of an MMO. MMO. Um, Particularly when the RAID finder uses what's known as cross-server integration, although I think it may be some other terms for other places, but that's the one I'm most familiar with. Basically, what that means is it grabs people from multiple servers across many instances of the game. So you could be playing with people who don't even play on the same server you're playing on. And the importance of this is you cannot really interact with these people outside of this one instance that you're interacting with them. Which, on its face value, what does that mean? What's the importance of that? Uh, for just completing the content, it works. But as for establishing friendships, just talking to people, I often find when using Raid Finder, it's very often the case where people won't talk, they won't say anything, they'll just kind of go through the motions, almost like bots, if you will, to clear the content, whether it's a dungeon, instance, what have you. And, get another sip of water. I'm all dehydrated tonight. Where was I? And, it's this lack of social interaction you get when using Raid Finder, which is troubling for me. And specifically because it limits you to this cross-server integration. Now, there is a chance that you may actually get someone from your own server doing the same instance, but if you do not, the issue you'll run into is you'll be meeting all these people and playing with all these people, and like I said, there's a very real possibility you'll never see them again in any raid. Like I said, it's not entirely impossible, but like I said, it's fairly possible. And I think maybe this is just an issue for the lower level content. Perhaps when I get to the in-game content, there'll be more regulars that I would run into for the cross-server integration. But even if that were the case, um, you would still be limited to interacting with these people inside the instances that the raid finder puts you in. And if you're in a clan or a guild or group or what have you, then it's of course a little less noticeable. You can always get some of them to help you. But if you're trying to solo content, what I'm thinking is it would be like almost completely a different game. Of course, Final Fantasy 14's arguably single player in many aspects, but that's a discussion I'll get into a bit later. But if you don't communicate with anyone or try to interact with anyone while playing an MMO, it confuses me a bit since that's kind of the whole purpose of playing an MMO. And of course, I'm saying this when I've soloed a good portion of Final Fantasy 14, but I would argue that's less my fault and more Final Fantasy 14's design. Uh, but like I said, I'll get into that more later. So is Raid Finder ruining MMOs? Because I said FF14 is not the only MMO to use Raid Finder. Most controversially, WoW does, and it's been using Raid Finder for quite a while. A lot of other big name MMOs use Raid Finder. I believe the Old Republic. I think Guild Wars uses it as well, although I'd have to do a bit more research. Um, and like I said, it's not necessarily a bad tool. It's great if you just want to get into a dungeon quickly, and if you want to clear content of a game, it works. It it does its intended purposes well, you know, to its credit. Um, but like I said, it's the lack of social interaction you get when you utilize this tool that's a bit alarming for me. When it's in a game that's based solely around social interaction. But that's not to say that you can't interact with people when you use Raid Finder. Of course, you can still talk with them. Some people are a bit chatty, some are not. It's just who have to roll the dice, really, as is most of the cases when you're playing with groups or pickup groups. But what irks me is there's no option to disable cross-server integration, which I think if I could, I would set that up. I would probably get a longer queue time for my matchmaking with the Raid Finder, but at the same time, I would at least have a chance to actually maybe meet or play with some of these people that I'm meeting in a dungeon or an instance or what have you. But I don't know, that's just my gripe among many. I don't think it's the absolute worst tool, like I said, for an MMO to use, but I think whenever you implement one, you have to be very careful in how you do it. Like I said, the cross-server integration is really my biggest contention with it. But the other issues I mentioned are kind of irksome as well. Let me go ahead and get to another thing I'm a bit more hyped about. I can make sure we're still streaming okay. Yeah, we're good. Another thing I'm kind of hyped about. I'm gonna pull it up here in just a second. Is the Jurassic World website. It's a promotional website for the movie coming out here in June 12th or so. Uh, I'll get it up here in a second. Let's see if it works. Oh, come on. It may take it a second. I'll make sure here. I should pop up. Oh, you should be seeing a black box right about now. Let me see if I can get it this screen. Should be pulling up. All right, let me try this out. I'll get a new window. There we go. All right, Jurassic World. I said there was some kind of magic going on there, and I don't know what was happening, but there you go. Jurassic World. Let's see if I'm here. Park map. Okay, but if you've not been to this website, I would definitely recommend checking it out. It's Jurassic World. It's basically, like I said, a promotional website for the movie coming out. And what it lets you do is it lets you kind of peruse the island of, oh geez, I forgot what it's called. Isla Nubar, Isla something. And it lets you click on these little things here, and some of them have little things that I'm gonna pull out. If I can get, here we go. For instance, you get the Gentle Giants petting zoo. And you basically it's like go back to the text here 1 second. Enjoy the thrill of getting up close and personal with baby dinosaurs. Located by the visitor center, the Gentle Giants Petting Zoo lets you see, pet, and feed all your favorite herbivores. Feeling adventurous? Saddle up and ride a tiny triceratops. A good rub under the frill and they'll take you anywhere. Fun for guests of all ages. Helmets required. And let's see. Okay, and it gives you like information about the dinosaurs, and it shows these kids wearing these goofy helmets. And dino food for $5. And like I said, they're playing off, the tropes of a traditional, theme park styled website. And you can't really see it maybe this well in this picture, although it may be coming through for you pretty well. It's kind of like you can see a blurred Triceratops, like they're taking a picture of this girl, and the Triceratops is like out of focus. I can tell there's been some Photoshop magic done to this picture, but oh well. Let me go back and look at some other stuff. Bamboo forest. But yeah, our bamboo forest is the perfect way to find a moment of zen within Jurassic World's confines. Look out for our Hammond's Buddha statuettes and make an offering if you'd like. This relatively temperate hike is perfect for families and hikers and of all ages and aptitudes. All right, and like I said, it plays it up like I said, it's a real kind of theme park. Let's see. And what you can do is you can actually order tickets for the movie ahead of time if you feel so inclined from the website. I forget. Let's see here. Tickets. Okay, you click on tickets. And I'm never one for pre-ordering things, so I'm not encouraging this. In fact, I'm gonna have a whole bit where I talk about how I've never pre-ordered anything in a little bit here. But it'll route you to the nearest theater, and let's see. I wonder if it actually gives you a charge for it as well. I've not even looked yet. Okay. So yeah, it'll be for my theater around here, Fandango, be 9.50. But I thought it was a cool thing. Not as cool as the Snakes on the Plane promotion, which I got quite a while ago, where Samuel L. Jackson called me up and told me to get my ass into the theaters to watch Snakes on a Plane. I remember it vividly because that Snakes on a Plane had a promotion where you would enter in a friend's information and then enter in their phone number, and they would have pre-recorded sets of information Samuel Jackson would scream at them. For me, it was like, what did he say? Give me a second, it'll come back to me. Okay, I was like, Nelson, put down those video games right now and get down to your local theater to watch Snakes on a Plane, motherfucker. And it was like it was catered just to me. It had all these like little nuance notes which you could enter into the phone to get Samuel L. Jackson to yell at people, and that was for that movie, of course. Not maybe not the best movie, but a great advertising campaign. And like I said, I got a kick out of this site. If you're a fan of Jurassic Park, you know, it has a whole bunch of kind of references to the earlier movies and the lore, if you will. So if you're interested in Jurassic World, which will be out in June 12th or June 12th or 13th, then definitely check out this website. It's pretty cool. It's neato. It's kind of cool. But oh, there were a few things I was going to talk about regarding the movie. The first thing that's got a lot of people's knickers in a twist. That's Nikkers, as in pants. Uh, is a scene where the Jason Brody kind of looking guy, the raptor wrangler fellow, is staring down three raptors, and he has his hands like his palms at facing two raptors, and it's like he's looking at another one. He's like, "Okay, guys, listen up," as if he has some kind of control, like he's the raptor whisperer, and the idea is that he's somehow trained these raptors, and that they're like a group of a pack hunter kind of deal. Which, like I said, I can understand why a lot of people would kind of roll their eyes at this. It is kind of it's kind of kind of cringy. But at the same time, if you've read the books, which I've actually listened to the audiobook as of late, I can kind of see how it might have been done. Because in the book, they actually talk about genetically modifying dinosaurs to make them more submissive and easier to control. So arguably, maybe the geneticists reprogram raptors to make them more a little less ferocious. But I think one of the main plot twists are going to be like the raptors are going to develop their own kind of sense of hierarchy, and they're gonna double cross the dude, maybe or maybe not. We don't know. And what else is there? They have the guy who played Wu in the first movie. I think is also making a reappearance. Let me see. For Jurassic World Wu. Pull him up here. There we go. Oh no, Henry Wu. All right, so here he is in the original movie versus, okay, pretty young, a pretty young fellow, and here he is in the new movie. Of course, age has been fairly nice to him. He's not looking too bad, considering this movie came out in 1990 something. So yeah, it was in mid to late 90s when Jurassic Park came out. So the fact that they managed to grab him is pretty cool. I get to see a cameo from him, and there may be cameos from other folks. I've not heard of anyone else other than Henry Wu. Uh, let's back out of here. What else was I gonna go over? There's also was it what is it? They've made a genetically like the alpha T Rex. It's like the T Rex to end all T Rexes, but I forgot what it's called. New T Rex. Hmm. Let's see. This is the research I should have done beforehand, but I've I've not done the research ahead of time. Banana pajamas. I can't find it. But basically, it's like they've combined multiple DNA strands from all kinds of different dinosaurs and into one dinosaur. And it's like it is the no joke dinosaur. It is like the ridiculous tier. It can turn invisible. It's hyper intelligent. It can hunt for sport rather than for food. And it's completely ridiculous. And some people have foreshadowed the idea that maybe this guy is going to fight the original T-Rex and then beat him, and then that will much like the other. There was another dinosaur in the Jurassic Park 3 that killed T-Rex, and supposedly people hated it. I didn't really mind either way. I just thought it was part of the movie. But a lot of people up in arms over that as well. Like I said, I'm interested in it just for the sake of seeing how they're gonna make this new dinosaur work. And like how many effects are gonna be practical versus how many are gonna be CG, that sort of deal. But close, minimize that. What else? What else have I got on the agenda? Final Fantasy XIV. I touched on this earlier when I was talking about Raid Finder, and I suppose I kind of mixed these topics up. I should have kept Raid Finder and Final Fantasy XIV together, but I was like, that's too much doldrum for one continuous paragraph, so I had to mix some Jurassic Park in there. Uh, Final Fantasy XIV. I've been playing it for a couple months now. It's an MMO. It's has Final Fantasy. It has a lot of nods, winks, and nudges, in the direction of the fans in regards to characters, uh, art style, and lore. So, like, really, if you played any other Final Fantasy games, you should really enjoy this if you've been looking for an MMO to play. If you're not looking for an MMO, this game doesn't really redefine the genre. It's really pretty. It's really it's I would say it's fun for an MMO. Now, like I said, I've played MMOs before. Uh, the kind of it uses a turn-based or quasi-turn-based kind of fighting style, much the same way that World of Warcraft does. Although some would argue it's a bit slower paced. Uh, there's, for instance, the 2.5-second global cooldown. And for the uninitiated, basically what that means is you have to wait around 2.5 seconds between each attack. So it makes your decisions on which attacks you use and in the order that you use them more important, rather than just mashing every single skill button as fast as you can with 0.5 second cooldowns to try to get that max DPS. I was like, wow, did I lose everyone? Okay, good. But what do I think of it? I've played it. I've gotten I've gotten a good halfway through the game so far, and one thing that's what one thing that's irking me, I should say, is I've never gotten to the end point of an MMO other than I would argue World of Tanks. But that's you can't really get to the end of any MMO, but like I said, as far as really getting into the in-game metagame content, World of Tanks is really about the most I've done. I can argue I also did the same for World of Warcraft, but I only did that on a private server. So I want to get in a traditional MMO to the end game content, and really Final Fantasy XIV would be the closest kind of game I would associate with being that kind of genre. I don't know. My brain's wandering a bit, trying to parse my words into the order that I want them to be. But no, I need to tell you what I think of the game. The game is I like it. It's fun. The classes I I thought they were going to be more complex starting out, but the more you play, the more everything kind of falls into place and makes sense, and you understand things, which of course makes sense, you know. But all the classes feel fun to play, and you can switch between any of the classes at any time. So if you're playing a tank kind of character, and you realize like halfway through, like 4 or 5 hours with a gameplay that you hate the tank, you can be like, well, screw this, and switch over to a more DPS oriented class. Although if you want to get into raids at a reasonable amount of time, you're probably going to play a tank because the tank queue in this game is ridiculous. You can queue up for a dungeon and be inside of it in the span of like a second. Whereas if you're a DPS class for the uninitiated, that's damage per second. Uh, it can take upwards of 30 minutes. So, yeah, if you wanna get into a dungeon fast, be a tank. If you wanna wait around for a while, maybe play another game, make a hot pocket, you wanna go DPS. Yeah, classes are fun. The world is gorgeous. Uh, well, it graphically, I would argue it's not actually the best, but stylistically, it's very good. I would say it's on par with World of Warcraft in terms of stylisticness. Uh, and really, that's the important thing. You can have all the polygons you want and all the HD textures that can fill up the screen and your hard drive respectively, but if they're not put into place in the proper way, if they're not coordinated properly, if the maps aren't designed to take advantage of the geometry you're presenting, you're just gonna have shapes floating around in space that don't really compel people to play. Like, where am I walking to? Am I in a desert? Do these buildings make sense? Where am I going? Is there a walkway here? Why is there a walkway here? In that regard, Final Fantasy XIV feels like it's a well put together world. And if you played enough games, you'll understand what I'm saying if you compare it to a lot of other MMOs out there. Oh boy, 33 minutes. Feeling pretty good, although I'm running short on topics, so this may be a shorter stream compared to a couple of my other entries. But that's fine because at this point I just need to make up for the stream that I'm missing tonight because this is a makeup stream for the stream I should have done last Thursday. So I have to do this one and then I'll be caught up for last week and then I'll do another stream probably, hopefully, fairly soon as I can assemble enough ideas together to get a cognizant thought together. But I'm cutting myself a bit short. I still have a bit more to talk about with Final Fantasy XIV. Uh, like I said, it's a traditional MMO fair styled combat system. So if you played any MMO, it should kind of click for you fairly easily. Uh, and to that end, that's really why I don't like it completely. I like a lot of what it does. I think a lot of what it does is really cool. But the problem I have with it is, like I said, the combat is turn-based, and I'm a guy who likes technical skill-based combat. Or if it's not technical skill-based combat, I don't have a problem with turn-based games, mind you. But I don't know, for me, if I have like I don't know, let's just really I'm kind of exploring my own thoughts here. Uh, at what point do I stop enjoying turn-based combat? Because I like Advance Wars, I like Fire Emblem, uh, and at one point I really did enjoy Pokemon, although that was ages ago. Jeffrey. Uh, Sorry, it's a shout out to somebody there. And I'm trying to think, is it just MMOs that I don't like? Because I played Terra, which has arguably more action-based combat, and while it offered a very pretty world, arguably a very nice art design and combat kind of setup, I didn't stick with it. Personally, though, I felt like it was kind of like a throwaway kind of world. Like it had a really cool style, but it was not very memorable, if that makes any sense. And I'll maybe talk about Terra at some point, but right now I'm talking about Final Fantasy XIV, and particularly bleh, the, like I said, the combat, which, like I said, I would like it if it was more action based, but at the same time, it would not function as a Final Fantasy game if it was fully real time combat. And to that, I'm thinking about unsubbing for a while and just taking a break from Final Fantasy XIV for a couple different reasons. Uh, the sub that's, of course, you have to pay for playing is part of it, but that's not the only thing. I'm thinking also about playing some Phantasy Star Online 2, or PSO 2, if you will. Uh, Unlike Final Fantasy XIV, PSO 2 has more action-based combat, but it's all in Japanese. So if you don't speak Japanese or are willing to kind of miss out on a bunch of the story content, you're going to be looking at a whole lot of gibberish, a whole bunch of moon runes. And for some people, that's not a problem. For some people, they don't really care about the story. They just want to play PSO, and or in this instance, PSO 2. And this is the game they've been waiting for since the original Phantasy Star Online came out. For me, like I said, I enjoy both the combat and the story in regards to PSO, and I was looking forward to the story that PSO 2 was going to offer. And in that respect, you can kind of hunt down the story. You can see translations of various, conversations and so forth on the internet if you so desire. But for me, like I said, I want to have that interaction in the game. And some people would argue and say that's entitled, that, I should stop complaining. But for me, like I said, uh, maybe I'm spoiled. Maybe it's because I have that wonderful American privilege of being in a English speaking country. But I just it's really hard for me to enjoy uh, the Japanese only PSO2 right now. Now I do have another option. I can play the Southeast Southeast Asia version. And if you're familiar with that, basically it's the same game as PSO2, except it's actually in English, but it's only in Southeast Asia, and they've IP blocked every other place but Southeast Asia. So a lot of fans took that as like a big FU to just basically everyone who's followed the Phantasy Star Online series, since PSO. And I have played both versions, both the Japanese as well as the Southeast Asia version, and honestly, I couldn't really tell that much of a difference. Purists of the PSO uh, camp will argue that the SEA version is wholly inferior to the Japanese version. I can see their arguments in that regard. Um, a lot of the translation doesn't quite match up with what the original PSO translation gave us, which was in Japanese force was force, and when they translated it over to English, it was also force. For the Southeast Asia version, they're called wizards and elves and such. So there's a few things that are a bit garbled. Uh, it's a it's a bit disheartening. But now, why am I not playing the Southeast Asia version? Because, like I said, that IP block requires you to use a VPN service. And if you're not familiar with that, it's basically a way of jerry-rigging your internet to make it look like you're playing from Southeast Asia. That's really it's ridiculous. Um, But more than that, why am I not playing the Southeast Asia version? Southeast Asia version. Uh, I guess it was like even with the translation and the people playing there that were nice enough and the content that was available, I felt I I just didn't feel like it was that much fun, and that was probably the most disheartening thing for me. Uh, it's like maybe I had some greater expectation for the game. Maybe I was thinking it was going to be better in some regard, but after playing both, like I said, both versions that are available right now, uh, it's acceptable, and the things it does do, which is music, art style, and of course the action styled combat is great. But uh, at the same time, like I said, it's kind of one of those things where you just have to play, kind of to really understand the feel for it. But for me, like I said, I couldn't enjoy it, so I kind of just stopped bothering with it. But now, like I said, I have been playing with it a little bit to see what's changed, to see if the English patch for the Japanese version has gotten any better. To my dismay, it has not. But no, I think I may give it another go, maybe to see if it sticks on me this time compared to last time where it's kind of fell off. I'm seeing as would it work as an alternative to Final Fantasy 14 for something for me to be interested in. My only well, another contention I have about PSO 2 is how do I say this? If I want to introduce any of my friends to it, it is a endeavor. I said that's assuming, like I said, they're wanting to play an online game. They're also going to be have to willing to go through the registration process, download the game uh, using a couple different tools, then set up the game so that at least a portion of it is in English, and then attempt to play the game. A lot of them, like I said, most of my friends have maybe played PSO a little bit, some not at all. So it would be asking like a fairly heavy burden in any regard. But to ask them just to play a game online with me, but to play PSO2, it would be a very big chore. And there's no real support for PSO2 outside of Japan. Like if you have any technical issues, you forget your password, you're basically just SOL, you know. So there's that as well. There are ways you can actually get the in-game currency, or I guess not the in-game currency, but the cash shop currency through. Uh, it's kind of like a. You have to go to a website, give them your information, and they kind of pass it down the line, and you get your in-game currency. I've not researched it myself because I haven't. I don't really want to do that since I would want to support a version that actually supports me, which like I said, the Japanese version does not support the U.S. right now. We just kind of anyone outside Japan more or less just kind of piggybacks on the Japanese servers at the moment. Oh, like I said, I started talking about Final Fantasy 14, started then jumped to all kinds of other different games. Uh, But now back to Final Fantasy 14. I'm probably gonna keep on playing it just because I want to get to that end game. I want to see the end. I want to know what happens at the end. Uh, Time for a drink of water. I've next docket. I'm moving along because I've talked about this. I've rambled long enough. It's time to get to pre-ordering games. More specifically, I've never pre-ordered any games. Yeah. So why not? What's my contention with pre-ordering? Uh, Specifically, I was always of the mind like, ah, oh, shoot, that's really expensive. I'll wait until I have the money, pretty much. So it never made sense to me to put down money and not immediately get something back. Now, of course, this is before really there was a time of pre-order bonuses. Like they existed when they first came out, but they weren't really that big. But as time has went on, I've seen more and more pre-order bonuses being attached to games nowadays. And with the advent of online passes and so forth, uh, it's almost expected that you have the newest version of the game if you want any chance to play the multiplayer. Otherwise, they'll either lock you out of the multiplayer or in some other way just gimp the game for you. Whether it's some kind of special additional bit of content, an extra character or map pack or so forth. But ignoring all that, what's my problem with it? Uh, really, when you're pre-ordering a game, what you're doing is you're placing a bet. You're betting your money that the game that's going to come out is going to be worth the money you paid for it. So never mind any reviews, never mind any hearsay or any of that. Like you're sure that the game is going to be good, so you're putting your money on the table ahead of time. For me, that never made sense. Uh, Importantly, because if a game is really popular, there's always going to be copies. So the idea of there ever being a game running out was just nonsensical. Like I said, the only games that ever typically run out are games that are not popular, but are maybe popular on the indie scene. For instance, Katamari Damacy. That is a gem among gems, and good luck finding it in your local EB Games store. EB Games doesn't exist anymore. Good luck finding it in your local GameStop. The GameStop Megalo Corporation. Yes. More rare gems that you're not gonna stumble across anymore. The kind of games like what would be another good example? Catherine, I heard was pretty rare, or it's getting to be rare. Although I think that may be a digital release, and that's another part that I'll get into pre-ordering. But for right now, let's stick to physical copies. For pre-order, uh, my train of thought is dying. For pre-order, like I said, you're placing the bet that the copy of the game is going to be good. And as the recent past has shown us, that's not always the smartest move. Uh, the one game that comes to mind now, this isn't the only game that's had bugs, but this is probably the one that's probably caught the most headlines. That was the Assassin's Creed Unity game. I believe it was Unity. Uh, the game launched, it was buggy, slow, filled with glitches, and to this day, I believe some people on certain respective consoles still cannot play the game in a non-broken format. It's either, I think, 360s or PC version. I'm not sure. And even then, like I said, this game still has a few bugs and issues. And to its defense, when you have games as big and, as deep mechanic-wise as Assassin's Creed, you're gonna have bugs every so often, that they just aren't caught. But anyone who, like I said, actually played it, I didn't because I'm not a fan of the series, but from the articles that I've read, uh, the bugs were all over the place. If you're watching any YouTube videos when the game first came out, there were characters that would just spaz out, hair would go wild, they would go through ceilings or walls, people's faces would literally disappear off their head. It was it was a mess. Like clearly there was no bug testing, or what little bug testing they did, what meager amount they managed to do was not nearly enough. And you got to see the results of it with the final product. And what really is a kicker of this is people pre-ordered this game. People put money on the table saying, "Oh boy, Assassin's Creed, I can't wait. I can't wait for this game to come out. It's going to be so balls to the wall good." And then they get a game that is, for all intents and purposes, broken, or damn near to be completely broken. Uh, and they have no recourse. It's like they can swap their game in at GameStop. You know, uh, I guess I'm not sure about GameStop's current policy. I think they would give you the refund for the full amount. Uh, I if the game is absolutely, or there may have been some shenanigans about that as well. I haven't read up on that. I would assume they would refund you the full amount if the game didn't work at all. Although if the game technically was working but had a few bugs, I think GameStop could somehow argue, no, the game's fine. If you want to trade it in, we'll give you partial credit or something to that extent. Um, I'm not sure, but still, if, even if you didn't want to trade it in, if you just wanted to have a good game that worked, you know, and you didn't want to go follow through with the recourse of trading it in, say you're getting that game as a gift for somebody, you know, and they have high hopes of this game, and they get it, and like I said, it's just a buggy mess, you know. Although the developers will say, oh well, we'll fix it in the future. We'll have patches forthcoming they'll resolve these issues. What kind of recourse is that for the gamer? Once you've already bought and paid for it, they don't care anymore, pretty much. I think that's what a lot of people felt. Uh, but like I said, Assassin's Creed Unity, not the only game that's done this. There was Aliens Colonial Marines, which was a mess. Although that was kind of a mess out of the gate, so I don't think anyone picked that game up anyway. But let's see here. We're looking on time, 51 minutes. Oh, Nelly. But why don't I pre-order? Like I said, it never made sense to me. But what was I gonna say? Pre-ordering games. Da, 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 da. I said I have my outline here, but it's very sparse. I've not populated it with nearly enough stuff. What to talk about? I think that about covers everything I wanted to go over for tonight's show. Apart from, I'll be going to a wedding here on the 23rd, which it'll be all kinds of fun. It'll be the bee's knees. I cannot wait. Uh, for the sake of security, for the sake of privacy, I won't go ahead and out anybody's name, but of course this is the fellow whose bachelor party I went to not too long ago. So if you're an internet sleuth, you may be able to hunt me down and hunt him down and have all that kind of fun. But what the wedding's gonna be a nice shindig. It's gonna be outside, uh, over at his house with a tent and I'm assuming all kinds of niceties, all kinds of food and games and such. And I cannot wait to go. Uh, my only problem is, I said I do have a gift for him, uh, but I said I have to give him the gift, and what was I gonna say? I gotta drive all the way down there. It's a long drive. It's a long drive down. It's a long drive back to where I want to go, and it's just a lot of driving. So while I will be happy to see my friend, uh, you know, tie the knot as it were, I am not looking forward to the drive down there because it's a long, arduous drive. And if you've watched previous shows, I'm no fan of driving for long periods of time. Oy. But no, the wedding's looking to be a fun affair. I cannot wait to go. I think I have settled on a gift card idea. I'm not sure where. I'm probably gonna get Jeffrey a GameStop gift card since well, I can give him a GameStop gift card, but yeah, I think I'll go with. Yeah. Okay, well, I don't. If he's watching, I don't want him to know ahead of time, so I'll get him some kind of gift card, as well as another gift card for the bride to be. But this will be the first wedding I've ever been to, so yeah, first time for everything. I cannot wait. Ugh. With that, I think I'm about done with this show. I didn't go over nearly as much stuff as I would have liked to, but overall, not a bad show. Thanks for watching. If you did watch, I didn't publicize or broadcast this thing ahead of time. So anyone who is watching is pretty much probably one of few. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and transition my usual broadcast time to 9 o'clock as opposed to 6 o'clock. Be a Kuaz. Uh, like I said, it's easier for a lot of my folks who actually would watch it to watch it if I schedule it at that time. And I think once I do get employed, uh, I'll have a much easier time scheduling to have an earlier morning shift and then have all my nights open for podcasting and such if I choose to do that, rather than uh, having a 6 o'clock broadcast time and then having to worry about maybe getting out of work too late or too early. But no, dude, do click the like and subscribe buttons and stuff. I will be getting back to streaming video games, like I said. Well, you didn't hear it from here, but probably in the podcast you'll never hear because it got burgled. I will get back to streaming video games once I get a dual screen monitor setup going again, which will be when I'm back down south in my old house with a dual monitor setup, which is the bee's knees for streaming video games. But thanks everybody. We're about to shut the show down, shutting her down soon. So go ahead and close your browser, or leave a comment before you close it. And click all the like buttons, click all the buttons, and tell me how much you loved the show. You didn't love the show, did you? Oh, it's okay. It's okay. This is not my best one. Take it easy, folks. Good night.